Friends and viewer, Darkness at Noon by Arthur Koestler, a fictional novel published in 1940. And Darkness at Noon is Arthur Koestler's fictional exploration of the socialist states that emerged midway through the 20th century. In particular, it asks how a movement whose original purpose was to improve the condition of the masses could instead end up terrorizing its own people, including its founder. The novel follows one of these founders, Nicholas Salmonovich Robachov, through the last month of his life, which he spends in prison and then on trial until he is finally executed at the end of the book. Though the book is set entirely within the walls of Robachov's prisons, through his conversation with his examiners and his own daydreams and memories, we have glimpses into Robachov's life previous to his final month that help to account for his current situation and state of mind. In part one of this book, the first hearing chronicles Robachov's arrest and first week in prison. Through his flashbacks and conversation with Ivanov, Robachov's old friend and first examiner, we are introduced to Vasilich, the porter in Robachov's apartment building, who returned to the story in part 4. We also learn the details surrounding Robachov's involvement with the expulsion of two party members, Richard in Germany and Little Loyally in Belgium. The fates of these two men, one presumably dead and the other a confirmed suicide, weigh heavily on Robachov's conscience and are the underlying motivation for his opposition to party politics. Part 2, the second hearing, consists of three major elements: Robachov's memory of Arluva, the lover he betrayed and who was executed as a result, the death march of his old friend Bogrov, who is dragged past Robachov's cell door whimpering and mourning Robachov's name, and Robachov's lengthy examination by Ivanov, whose ultimate goal is to convince Robachov through philosophical discussion to re-establish and declare his sincere allegiance to the party. Though Robachov is mostly convinced by Ivanov by the end of this section, the second hearing provides the space for Robachov to clearly articulate his critique of party politics and more fully develop his understanding of his own complexity in his repressive machinery. Part 3, the third hearing, narrates Robachov's session with Glitkin, his second examiner. Glitkin replaces Ivanov, who is relieved of his duties, arrested and executed for his mismanagement of Robachov's case. Robachov's has no personal history with Glitkin, but he sees him as the logical result of the regime created by the revolution. His rigid posture and expressionless demeanor make him seem more machine than the man. He is the embodiment of logic. As such, Glitkin's examination of Robachov's, aided by the physical pressure of sleep deprivation and blinding white light, trap Robachov's in logical truth that do not accurately account of his individual reality, such as the truth and the logical conclusion of Robachov's opposition to the party would be an attempt to assassinate its leader. That Robachov is not actually guilty of this crime makes no difference, And given Robachev's own adherence to the ideology of consequent logic, he feels compelled to acknowledge this truth by the end of part 3. Kletkin's relentless, inhuman logic, Robachev's guilty conscience, and intense desire for sleep lead to his full confession of crimes he did not commit, but logically should have. In part 4 of this book, we see that the grammatical fiction recounts Robachev's trial and execution. The grammatical fiction refers to a concept that Robachev has been developing throughout the book. He first refers to the grammatical fiction as a silent partner. It exists outside of logic, and its presence in usually accompanied by toothache. This silent partner or grammatical fiction is Robachev's conscience that that has no place in the revolution of party politics. Robachev named his I the grammatical fiction because of the way that the first person singular has been excised from the language of the party. If there is no I, then the individual need to be entered into the philosophical equation of right and wrong. If there is no I, then an individual humanity need to be considered or even pitied once Robachev has fulfilled his duty to the party by publicly confessing his guilt without expectation of pity or reward. He has a few hours left before his execution to recapture his first person singular, that is his individuality. So this is the story of the Robachev, the darkness at noon we have in this book. So we have a theme involved in this novel, power and suffering. Who has the right to kill and for what reason? This is the main question and theme of this novel. The book's epigraph, one by Machiavelli and one by Dostoevsky, established the central theme of the book, which is an exploration of relationship between power and moral decency. The Machiavelli excerpt from Discorsi explained the necessity of killing of one's predecessor as well as the descendants of one's predecessors if one is to remain in power. The brutal and Machiavellian logic of power is juxtaposed with a call to moral decency implied by Dostoevsky excerpt from Crime and Punishment, which assert that one cannot live quite without pity. Robachev's attempt to reconcile his responsibility to carry out the goals of bloody revolution he helped engender, a responsibility that seems to require strict adherence to Machiavellian principle. With his individual moral responsibility to the people the revolution was meant to help is what drives the book as a whole. Related to this theme is the question of the meaning of suffering. In the last hour of his life, Robachev finds he wants to explore the difference between suffering which made sense and senseless suffering. This question of suffering and what it is for underlies the larger question of relationship between power and decency, particularly in relation to state-sanctioned imprisonment, torture and murder. What ends are worth the cost of human suffering and how much suffering is necessary. So this is the theme of this novel, Darkness at Noon by Arthur Koestler. I hope you will enjoy it. Kindly don't forget to like and subscribe this